Let me bring Lou to the stage. Hi.
Hello, thank you for having me.
It's our pleasure. While listening to the talk, I was wondering, how does it feel for you? How is it different to be working, to be touching the data sort of, rather than making line charts somewhere?
Well, it's a sort of two-pronged answer, really. I've always been working with data, but I just haven't realised it. When you measure the body and you take down, measurements from the human form, and then you pattern cut and sew your pattern together, you're actually sewing data together. And I hadn't even thought about this. And everything that we're wearing, our clothes, is actually a configuration of data. It's a 3D representation of data. And so that was a really strange revelation for me, that I've been sewing and pattern cutting since I was 7 years old, and I just hadn't ever realised that. But then the other part to that other part of the answer to that question is, I really didn't expect to actually have an emotional connection to physically handling the numerical data. And it was, when you're pattern cutting, it's very much problem solving. It's very much formulaic, and you follow a number of processes to get to your end goal. And because of the huge disparity with some of the data that I was working with, the normal sort of routes that I would take to get to a destination were blocked by the data, and I had to problem solve it. So, the more that I was trying to solve these problems, the more I was sort of realizing this is almost a metaphor. And I'm not saying that I know what it's like to be from an ethnic minority or sectioned or anything like that, but it just really illustrated the disparity in the data, the fact that it was difficult to work with in terms of proportion and scale. And it just really, as I was drafting and sewing, I was thinking about these individuals. I was thinking about, what must it be like to be living through this? And that was something I just wasn't expecting.
Yeah, that makes sense, because your process is probably slower as well, because we can make a line chart in just a few seconds now with some tools, and if you have to do it with your hands, then it really makes you think about what the data is. How do you choose how you will represent the data? What pattern will it be? How will it look like?
Yeah, I mean, that's been a real process. When I first started my master's degree, I thought, I'm not going to make this project about me. I'm going to make it, I don't know what it's going to be yet, but it's not going to be personal to me. And as the weeks unfolded, we have a lot of critique and a lot of discussion, and then I had a lot of feedback from people, not outside of the university as well as inside university. And I came to realise that actually you just can't avoid making the work personal. That's just part of being a creative person. And I ended up choosing subjects that actually I have some experience of, because I wanted to be able to talk about it from a reasonably informed perspective. So within my family, we have a particular family member who has been hospitalised with severe mental health issues, and as a child, I was visiting these institutions, and it was a life-changing experience to visit these places and see various people struggling horrifically at times with mental health. COVID-19 I chose because we were all living it. And I've chosen, the data that I can choose is unbelievable. I mean, I was also looking at drug use and things like that, again, because it's something that is close to home within my family. So I ended up making it very personal in the
end. How do you manage the rational side of your projects, because data is supposed to be a bit rational, at least numeric, with the emotional side that you've just described?
Well, I think the rationality comes from the numbers. The numbers are the numbers, and I try not to manipulate the numbers at all. I keep they are what they are. I suppose the technique that I use, I choose the technique that I feel will best represent the numbers. So at the moment, I'm sticking with this particular jabber technique, but in the presentation, you can see that I've tried a number of different techniques. The jabber one just seems to be the one that people respond to the most. In terms of being emotional, well, like I say, that was a surprise. That was something I wasn't expecting to feel. So, the rational side of my brain, you stick to the numbers, you think carefully about your subject matter, and the emotional side of my brain is just something that happens. It's sort of naturally occurring as the process unfolds.
So would you encourage all data visualization practitioners to try and do something like this at least once to get a deeper connection to the data?
I think so. I think working with data in a 3D form, even if it's just, sorting, Lego bricks or whatever it may be, to physically handle data that's got a huge disparity, you feel that data through the physical handling of it. So I think it is definitely a good exercise that anybody could do.
So some people in the chat are really impressed that this is a master's project. And we were wondering, will there be a place where we will be able to see them? So for example, some of your work that you showed that was illuminated, I imagine you're maybe thinking of an exhibition or some sort of space. So tell us all about it.
Yeah, so as part of my master's degree, I have to do a viva where I have to present my work. So this is really good practice for me, having these questions. And I have to basically justify my decisions. But then there's also an exhibition where my work will be on show. But I have contacted hospitals as well, because a lot of hospitals across the world actually have their own art collections, and this is something I wasn't aware of. So I'm thinking about maybe presenting this in a public space. I want it to be something that people can sit in front of, listen to these stories that we've all experienced. That's again another form of capturing data. And it also links to the learning styles that I mentioned. So the sculpture will be 3D, but there's also an auditory, there's a tactile element. So for people that learn differently and absorb information differently, I'm hopefully catering for lots of different ways of processing information.
Since it's a master's project, how do your supervisors and your peers react to this? Are they doing something completely different? How do you stand in that universe?
No one is doing anything similar to what I'm doing, and we've got people who are animators, people who are photographers, fine artists. There's a real eclectic mix, which I think is really rich for feedback, which I really like. I haven't found anybody else who's doing what I'm doing at all, and I'm sure there's going to be somebody out there that is, but I haven't found anybody yet. It's been really well received, and I think the presentation, it was difficult for me to explain the processes fully, but in my master's degree I'm able to do that. I take lots of photographs, lots and lots of photographs, and it's been really, really positive.
Super interesting. Do you already have a next medium you would like to explore away from fabric?
To be honest with you, not yet. I've tried using, one of the things that I was doing was I was collecting packaging during lockdown, and tried to make some of these sculptures out of waste card and things like that. And it doesn't work. This particular technique doesn't work in anything that's very solid. You have to use something which has got drape to it, or at least some sort of kind of soft structure. At the moment, I'm so entrenched in what I'm doing that I haven't really thought too far ahead. But I am definitely open to new ideas and exploring new materials in the future.
I'm sure some ideas may pop up in the chat after you say that, so careful what you wish for. Where do you look for inspiration?
Really, the creative pattern cutting techniques. I've taught these techniques for years and years, and I've never really had the opportunity to explore them myself. And I teach my students the basic sort of foundational level, and then they go off and develop these techniques. And I'm sort of desperate to have a go myself, and I can't because I'm the lecturer. So when I got the opportunity to do my master's degree, I knew that it was creative pattern cutting that I wanted to explore. And some of the beautiful technically skilled, geometric, or beautiful drape, or these very sculptural forms, I've always really been found very inspirational. And obviously, like I said in my talk, most of the people that I've been inspired by have come from Japanese anti-fashion pattern cutters. But I have been very lucky to meet a pattern cutter called Julian Roberts. He came in to work with my students. He does the subtractional pattern cutting, and his work is amazing. So it's very easy to be inspired. There's lots to be inspired by.
Talking about being inspired, is there someone you would like to collaborate with on any sort of extension of this project?
Do you know, part of my teaching is all about collaboration. I love to collaborate. I love to bounce ideas off of other people. I like where you take things out of their usual context and fuse unusual things together, unusual disciplines together. Hopefully you break some new ground by doing that. So yeah, absolutely, I would love to collaborate, but at the moment I'm just open-minded, whatever comes my way.
Speaking of the future, someone is wondering if you have considered making inflatable shapes.
I have seen inflatable shapes, so there's other people that have done that, and that is something, but it's more in a fashion sense rather than a data sense in terms of sculptural forms. Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I love the idea of it sort of being quite novel, and the idea is that people want to engage with these forms to promote inquiry and to promote discussion.
So to wrap up the Q&A, your work is super interesting and super creative, but we do have a lot of people in the audience who don't necessarily get to do this on a daily basis. So maybe they work in a newsroom or even in a corporate environment where there can be constraints. So do you have any lessons or takeaways from your projects that you think they could use in their daily work?
I think it sort of goes back to that earlier question about, would you recommend anybody tries this? You can show data in 3D forms almost by using anything. It could be paper clips, it could be, empty coffee cups in your trash can. You could keep them and pile them up, and you could then figure out how much you're spending a week on coffee and devise that, in a 3D physical form. I think it's just being curious. It's looking at what you've got around you and what you can use to, physically show this data in a way that isn't perhaps numerical or some kind of 2D format.
So I said we were wrapping up, but one more question came in. So let me ask that before I let you go. How would you go about making your work more interactive to invite people to explore the data?
That is something that I had to actually problem solve, because when I first started this, we were in the throes of lockdown. So the whole first year of my master's degree was taught remotely. So everything was remote. And I have to do this exhibition, and we didn't know if people were going to be able to come along and even see the work, let alone touch the work. And they might have to go into the exhibition one by one at this point. This is what we were dealing with. So I thought about trying to create a data landscape that people could walk through, that it was sort of around them. It was, like I mentioned, the term sort of pregnant with data. We walk through this data glut. But in terms of making it interactive, I've thought about having a thread drawing where people can use thread to actually give their responses to the data, and it will capture it in a 3D form. But I've also thought about making a whole series of the masks that people can take away with them. But also, if we're able to touch things again by the time I'm doing my exhibition takes place, hopefully the forms, I'll be able to have something there that is tactile that people can touch and interact with.
This was super interesting, so inspiring and creative. Thanks so much for joining us. I do encourage you to check the chat and the talk notes in case any more questions come in, so that you can reply to them and maybe add some links to inspiring pieces. And do let us know when we can come to an exhibition to see your work. So thanks so much, and have a lovely end of your weekend.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.